Hi, in this video I'm going to unbox panic, anxiety and depression. Now typically in unboxing videos, someone receives something in a box and they take everything out of the box to see what bits and pieces you get. Well, I'm going to unbox panic, anxiety and depression, which really means I'm going to unpack them. But the first thing is let's turn them into questions. So you might say, and in fact you probably have said, what causes my panic? What causes my anxiety? What causes my depression? And these are good questions, but the cause of a problem does not necessarily give us the solution to a problem. I think a more interesting set of questions is what maintains panic, what maintains anxiety, what maintains depression. Because if we know what maintains these things, then we can turn off the things that maintain these problems and we're good to go. Now, it's certainly the case, if you look at the bookshelves behind me, it's certainly the case that there are many, probably hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of self-help books, and I have quite a few myself. And reading a self-help book isn't necessarily a good way to treat a clinical problem to destruction, which basically means really get rid of a clinical problem. Now you can pick up some insight and you can learn some stuff, but it's not so easy to do stuff if you learn it from a self-help book. The NHS in Britain, I'm afraid, in this current day and age, is good for some things, not so good for other things, and I'm afraid mental health problems is one of those things that's not quite so good for. Likewise, if you struggle with panic, anxiety and depression, a pharmaceutical solution is likely to be the one that you're offered by your GP. This isn't really the solution, it's just a way of managing the symptoms a little bit better. But of course, once you stop using it, the antidepressant or the anxiolytic, then you've got no protection and no benefit. And so really I'm going to suggest you a pharmaceutical approach. If you haven't started it, probably start something different in a sense, because it's not going to solve the problem, because a psychological problem requires a psychological solution. Now, my basic point is this: you can recover from panic, anxiety and depression with a little bit of focus and a little bit of time and effort. So my name is Dr. David Purvis. I'm a consultant psychologist. I've been a university lecturer, and I've created what I think was revolutionary active self-help CBT approaches to panic, anxiety, depression, even stress. And what makes these things revolutionary is this: we know that cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, works, and we know that it's the preeminent psychological treatment strategy. It's better than antidepressants, and if you can get a hold of it, it's the thing that you want. But it's expensive, right? To see someone like me for a treatment for depression is going to cost between £1,000 and £2,000 for a reliable, clinically effective treatment out of depression. Likewise, something similar for anxiety. So what's made my kind of programs revolutionary is I've taken all the knowledge and skills I have. I've taken all the knowledge and skills that I could acquire from the vast literature on CBT research, what causes problems, what maintains problems, and I've turned it into an active self-help CBT system where you can get everything you need at home on your own computer, even on your phone, and that will enable you to treat yourself without having to see a therapist. And so far, as I estimated anyway, my programs have helped about 4,200 people. So now let's move on. I'm going to unbox these problems and I'm going to show you how to recover from panic, anxiety and depression. So part of the problem is how we think about the problem, and it's even how we describe it. You might say, well, I have anxiety or I have depression, and even in saying it, it's like assuming it's a single entity, right? Anxiety is a thing, depression is a thing, but they're not single entities. They're actually, well, those are just labels actually. They're a whole combination, a cluster of entities that are categorized as a single thing. So this treats depression. Well, it can't treat depression because depression per se is different for everyone. Depression actually is what's called a hypothetical construct. It's just the name we give to this cluster of symptoms. So if we say, I have depression, we're not really doing ourselves a great favor, because we're actually disempowering ourselves out of a potential solution. So I like to call things soups because soups have a whole lot of ingredients. And let's have a little look at some of the things in the anxiety soup. Now, I have treated many hundreds upon hundreds of face-to-face clients, and this list of soup, anxiety soup, is a combination of the things that I've observed, the things that I've researched, and the things that the literature, the research literature tells us about anxiety. You will have, if you struggle with anxiety, you will have at least 4 or 5 of these. So some of them you might recognize, however. So the first one is your brain is misinterpreting normal events as threatening. Now we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail a little bit later on. You might not see that. You might think that you are actually, you feel threatened, so you might think you are threatened. But of course, if you look around, let me just take a look around. If you feel any kind of anxiety, and you're safely somewhere, then you know that your brain is misinterpreting normal events as threatening. You've learnt to worry, and you've interpreted that, or you think of that as some form of useful thinking process, but actually it's not. Worry is a simple waste of time, actually, and fortunately I can show you how to stop worrying. You're engaged in a lot of negative thought processes. Now, some of these you'll recognize, things like being self-critical, things like catastrophizing, things like criticizing yourself for not getting better quicker, or for blaming yourself for some things that have gone wrong that are just probably normal life processes, but you're kind of attributing anxiety to them. You're definitely over-focusing on what your body's doing. You're recognizing things that previously you would have just ignored, and you're thinking, oh gosh, I wonder what that means. Your brain's making faulty thinking shortcuts. Now, this is one that you won't recognize, but if you do things like black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, perfectionist thinking, even catastrophizing as well, your brain's making faulty thinking shortcuts. And that, of course, if it's a faulty shortcut, it leads you to the wrong place. You're probably doing avoidance, because avoidance is one of the 3 stools of anxiety. You're avoiding people, places and things, and of course that robs you of the opportunity of proving to yourself that your anxiety is a misinterpretation of something. And to be honest, you've probably been practicing being anxious for a long time. Now, if you want to become good at something, what must you do? Practice. You've probably been practicing being anxious, and consequently you're probably very good at it. So, in a shorthand way, the solution to anxiety is the Panic Pit Stop program. The Panic Pit Stop program is an active self-help CBT program, and that will solve anxiety. Now, we've said that panic and anxiety are not single unified entities. They're complex and have a number of elements, and that's how we deal with them. The Panic Pit Stop program deals with the elements I've just listed in the anxiety soup, and once you deal with those elements, you get rid of the anxiety and panic. It's quite simple, isn't it? Now, I've outlined the panic soup as well. It's not that different from the anxiety soup, because the anxiety soup is a kind of it goes from, in a sense, from 0 up to sort of 8 in terms of distress and severity. But between 8 and 10, that's where panic comes in. Panic is the pinnacle, it's the peak of the experience of anxiety. But 2 of the really important things that we see when we're adding panic in on top of anxiety is that you're probably breathing poorly. It's hard to have a panic attack or feel panicky if your breathing is really good. You tend to be hyperventilating, and you're probably causing a chemical imbalance, an imbalance between oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood, and that is an important element. And also, you're probably a little bit more adept at focusing on physical symptoms. Now, once you're in the panic soup, you're really intent on not having a panic attack, and that makes you massively avoidant. It makes you really do all sorts of stuff that we call safety behaviors in the trade, which basically means you do stuff which is completely unhelpful to keep yourself safe, but you think it's helpful. But the problem is it stops you from ever learning that a panic attack won't kill you, won't hurt you, and it is something that you can recover from, and it's not that hard if you go about it the right way. The solution to panic is the Panic Pit Stop program. The Panic Pit Stop program will take you everywhere you need to go to get rid of panic and anxiety. Now, let's have a look at the depression soup. The depression soup's a little bit different. Depression is a multifaceted, multi-element problem. And typically, if we're talking about depression soup, it's low self-esteem, self-critical attitudes, high standards and perfectionist tendencies, loss of rewarding activities, faulty thinking again, and to be honest, I could have put perfectionist, black and white, all or nothing into faulty thinking. Biased attention, which basically means that you have biased your brain through practice to recognize and accept into your kind of brain depressing and low mood congruent, low mood reinforcing perceptions, and it's harder for positive perceptions to get in. So you're doing a lot of negative thinking and unhelpful habits of thought, and you lost confidence in yourself. Now, I would suggest to you that at least 6 out of those 8 apply to you if you have, or well, if you suffer from depression. And if you've recovered from depression, some of those are still relevant because those are the things which will bring it back again. Now, I've made a little kind of a matrix in a sense. So this is a matrix of anxiety-related problems, okay? Attention problems, worry, avoidance, faulty thinking, being body-focused, so somatic-focused, and being self-critical. These are depression problems, self-critical, low self-esteem, a loss of reward, which basically means that you stop doing things which typically were rewarding and reinforcing in your life, negative thinking, loss of confidence, high standards, that constitutes. And I put panic in the middle because panic's not a whole lot different from anxiety. Now, what I've done is, and this looks like a really complicated slide, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is that I've color-coded some elements. So on the left-hand side, we have avoidance in green. We have avoidance in panic. We have a loss of rewards in depression. These are all avoidance-based strategies. Let's look at the sort of the flesh-colored one, body-focused in anxiety, body-focused in panic. And I could even have put body-focused in catastrophizing with depression to some extent. Let's look at the brown, the gold color one, faulty thinking and anxiety, worry and anxiety, self-critical and anxiety, worry in depression and panic, catastrophizing and panic, negative thinking, self-critical and depression. So what this slightly complicated looking slide shows is that there are many things which are what's called transdiagnostic. You have the same problem no matter, or you have the same element no matter what the clinical problem is. Now we could say that there are kind of 3 soups here. There's the anxiety soup, there is the panic soup, and there's the depression soup. But a lot of these soups have the same ingredients. You know, you might put carrots in the same thing, or you might put carrots in different recipes. You might put onions in different recipes. Panic, anxiety, and depression have similar ingredients in these different soups. And so we need to deal with enough of these elements to remove the problem. So it's simply impossible to say, well, I treat anxiety, or I treat depression, or I treat panic. What I do is I treat the components that create these problems and thereby defeat the problem. The solution to depression, which is a multi-ingredient soup, is my active self-help program, Mood Control. Now, you're the secret weapon. All we have to do is get you moving in the right direction with the right knowledge and tools, the right knowledge and skills, and your mental health problems can become a thing of the past. Now, here's the thing. Are you moving forward, or do you think that you're staying the same? Do you think that you're stationary? Well, the truth is, nobody can stay the same. Nothing stays the same. You're either moving forwards or you're either moving backwards. If you're moving forwards in the right direction, you're improving. If you think you're sort of stationary, you're actually going backwards, because every day that you remain in anxiety or depression or panic, you're reinforcing those problems and you're practicing having those problems for the next day, because every day is a rehearsal for the next day. So, many people have been through my active self-help programs, and people say this, a wonderful way to undo negative learned behavior. Homework was wonderful and very doable, helpful and very supportive. I've recommended it to friends. Homework, I did 30 minutes to an hour every night, which was manageable and definitely worth it. Although, actually, I don't say you need to do that much. I would suggest you 10 to 15 minutes a day would be quite sufficient, consistently every day, to move forward out of panic, anxiety, and depression. Everything was straightforward and made me think about what I should be doing. Brilliant. Homework was very good and possibly could do with more. So, The active self-help system, the active self-help CBT system has helped about 4,200 people. And that is a vast number of people. If you think about how many people that actually is, it's kind of a busy, it's like 3 or 4 busy supermarkets. It's quite a huge number of people that have been through the system. Now, one of the problems that we have is that human beings tend to believe that what their emotions tell them is true. So if you feel bad, for instance, with anxiety, depression, you often think that you are the problem. And of course, if you're the problem, well, what can you do about it? Well, not really much, right? Because it's me, I'm the problem. Certainly, this is more true in depression than almost anything. I'm depressed because, I'm a bad person, I'm not good enough, I feel like a failure, I'm a fraud. Now, if you believe that you're the problem, it's very hard to do anything, right? I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not interesting enough, people don't like me, I can't cope. But that just keeps us trapped. What I've just shown you is that every problem, panic, anxiety, depression, is a multitude of different things. Your emotions, however, keep you stuck, and they keep you from seeing that you are not the problem, but you have a problem. And once we get that perspective, we realize that actually, okay, I have a problem. My problem is I'm self-critical, I'm a perfectionist, I don't feel like I'm good enough, and I feel like I'm somewhat exposed when I go out. These are problems to be resolved and solved, and they're absolutely resolvable and solvable. So we need to make a key shift in many respects. We need to move from non-resourceful to resourceful, which basically means I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, I don't know what's going on, I'm just living as best I can, but actually I'm not very happy. That's not resourceful. We need to move to resourceful. I know what the problems are because I'm working through the active self-help CBT programs, I'm working on being self-critical, I'm working on not worrying, I'm working on not over-focusing on physical symptoms, I'm working on my self-esteem, right? From helpless to motivated. From I don't know what to do, I can't do anything therefore, to I do know what to do and I can do something. I am not the problem, but I have a problem and I am working on my problem. So just to nutshell it in a sense, right? Your problem, if you have panic, anxiety, depression, is that your brain is simply using a lot of unhelpful processes, and these cause the problems that you label panic, anxiety and depression. So active self-help is, I would suggest to you, probably the best way that you can get control of your mental health again, outside of seeing a therapist, in fairness. Although my active self-help programs are as good as seeing a therapist and also a heck of a lot cheaper. But they help you to regain control of your mental health. The tools that we provide in the active self-help programs will give you everything that you need. All you have to do is to make a decision to move past panic, anxiety, depression, for instance. Over many years, I've consulted many health professionals and who diagnosed me with suffering from depression. This is from a user. I was always on edge and fearful, and I didn't know I had anxiety as well till it manifested itself in the form of a series of panic attacks in 2016, landing me in hospital a few times. After being checked out by specialists and given the clear, the Panic Pit Stop app came to my attention. I've been familiar with Dr. Purvis's previous mood control series through his YouTube videos. I was particularly excited about the app, which then led me to do more in-depth with the Panic Pit Stop course. Up till then, I'd managed as best I could to cope on my own because seeing a psychologist on a long-term basis was beyond my financial reach. The Panic Pit Stop course, incredibly affordable by the way, came to my rescue. After I signed up, I received a new module each week, building on the previous week's coursework via email that included a video or audio plus worksheets to download and print. Within a week of diligently doing the worksheets, I already began to feel more assured as the information I applied slowly began to unravel my faulty thought patterns. Note, in my first sentence I said suffering from depression, but learning how the brain works in that depression and anxiety are outcomes from a faulty thinking process, it gave me great hope that I could stop the process and change the outcome. I could do something about my suffering. The most mind-empowering information I gleaned from the course was that you are safer than you think you are. You are stronger than you think you are. Within 3 months, I learned to master control over my anxiety and depression and haven't had another panic attack since. It does take a lot of commitment and practice and repetition to do the course, but the results are so worth it. I would highly recommend the Panic Pit Stop course to anyone suffering from panic, anxiety and depression. So, what you have to understand is that the problem is not panic, anxiety, depression. These are the consequences of the problem. And the problem, as we're describing it, is a kind of a melange, a soup of brain processes that come together to create the problem. So you experience panic, anxiety, depression, but these are not the problem. These are simply the consequences of the problems. So if we go back to the original question, what causes panic? Well, what causes panic is that your brain is interpreting something fairly mundane as if you're going to be annihilated. It's giving you the massive fight or flight response that you would need if you were going to fight for your life or run away, but you might be in bed, you might be in the bath, it might be at work. And so a panic attack is your brain flooded with adrenaline and all those other hormones that you need to survive, but you're not in a threatening situation. Isn't that a good example of your brain misinterpreting everyday experiences threatening? Your brain is wrong. Okay? What causes anxiety? Well, anxiety is, in my shorthand, an overestimation of the experience of threat. Your brain's overestimating the threat that you're under. Now, just to put this into a kind of a context, and I say this to clients all the time, I say this, how anxious am I right now? And they would go, ooh, I'm a 4. Okay, I say, well, look around, you know, where is the threat? And they would say, well, there isn't one. Okay, so in a sense, why are you anxious? Well, the answer has to be, you're anxious because your brain is consistently overestimating the threat that you're under. And in fact, if you're sitting at home or you're watching the TV or you're in the bath or whatever, anything over than 0 absolutely guarantees to you that your brain is overestimating the threat. Now, I used to be a trauma specialist. Well, I am a trauma specialist, but I used to be a trauma specialist in the NHS, National Health Service. And I would say to people, okay, you've had a road traffic accident and you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. You're going to drive home today. How likely does it feel that you'll have an accident and possibly be killed? And they would always say, oh, 50%, 80%. But let's say 50%, okay? I say, all right. So it actually feels like every 2 journeys you do, you're going to have 1 accident and possibly get killed. Yeah. Okay. So how many journeys have you done in your life? And I'll work it out, you know, like 32,000. Okay. How many accidents have you had? 1. Okay. So on average, you have an accident every 15,000 times, every 15,000 car journeys, but it feels to you like you're going to have an accident every 2 journeys. That is an incredible demonstration of the overestimation of threat. It's understandable psychologically, and I could, you know, take time to explain why it happens, but it's a massive overestimation of threat. That's what causes anxiety. And the principle of overestimation of threat causes all anxiety problems in general. Thank you, David. I love the logic and strategic approach of your program. If you were under real threat, you'd be defending your life. You'd be running away. So logical. No other psychologist or psychiatrist I've ever seen over the years has identified the thinking patterns and behaviors like you have. Having watched the videos on the Panic Pit Stop, I would now clearly, for the first time in decades, identify my problem as being anxiety. I'm surprised that what research has shown so far that the ER medics don't diagnose a panic attack when all the vital organs and blood work check out normal. I'm so relieved that you're showing me how to take the next steps. Let's take a look at what causes depression. Now, I haven't developed it very much in this talk, but your brain runs processes, and these processes pretty much make you do everything. They tell you what to do. Basically, they make you do everything. And much of what you do runs on automatic pilot. And that's fantastic because it would be far too complicated to do everything consciously. But your brain is running programs in depression that make you self-critical. They make you use lots of negative thinking and bias processes. They make you underestimate your strengths and resources. These programs make you feel that you're failing, but you're not. They make you feel like a fraud. They make you feel like you're not good enough, which is low self-esteem. And they make you overestimate your perceived faults and failings. These are elements of the actual depression soup that cause and maintain the problems of depression. Now, if you accept that something that's a simple word such as anxiety is actually a multifaceted, multi-element combination of things, processes that create the perception of anxiety. So in a sense, there's lots of bits to it. We just label it as anxiety. If you accept that, then you also have to accept that we have to deal with those individual elements as well to be able to get rid of the anxiety. You can't just sort of treat anxiety. It just doesn't make sense because anxiety is not a thing. It's a combination of things labeled as a thing. Here's the solution. I've created a multi-aspect way of dealing with a multi-aspect problem. So in principle, I've created a library of courses and resources, some short, some long, that you use to enable yourself to treat yourself from panic, anxiety, and depression. Now, if you take an antidepressant, you literally learn nothing. You learn nothing about panic, anxiety, depression, and therefore, once you stop taking the antidepressant, you're no better off. Literally no better off. That's what the research tells us. And furthermore, the antidepressant itself often isn't up to much. It gives you potentially some slight relief from the worst elements of the symptoms. But in my personal research in the NHS, you still suffer from panic, anxiety. Well, let's say anxiety, depression. You might not have panic attacks, but you still suffer from the problems. And so you might have to stay on an antidepressant or an anxiolytic for the rest of your life. If you see a therapist, you might learn something, although it's actually quite hard to remember your own therapy. So you may learn something and you may learn some tools or you may not. But here's the thing. If you learn what causes and maintains panic, anxiety, depression, and if you learn how to treat them yourself, you are in control of the processes and therefore you're in control of your treatment. You never have to suffer again because you are in control of what you need to do to get rid of panic, anxiety, and depression. That's active self-help. So the first program is this, the Panic Pit Stop program. Now, Panic Pit Stop program is an active self-help CBT structured program that will give you 6 modules of treatment. Each module provides you with a week of activity, so it takes you basically 6 to 7 weeks to go through the program, and it will teach you everything that you need to be free of panic, anxiety. And the tools are always available to you as long as you remain in the program. Over 28 hours of audio and video. And this alone, if I could sort of show you that this alone would cure panic and anxiety, do you think it would have a value of about £650? Because it would cost you more than that to see a therapist. So this is the value to you, by the way. This is not what you're going to have to pay. This is the value to you, £650 for over 28 hours. And that's everything I know, plus. The second active self-help CBT program is Mood Control. Now, Mood Control was originally designed to cure depression and anxiety. And it's a 13-week active self-help CBT program, which basically means a module is released to you every week and you just work through the module. It's as simple as that. Now, in my clinical practice, I expect people to go from wherever they are, let's say severe clinical depression to cured in about 12 to 13 weeks, which is why I structured Mood Control to be a 13-week program. It has over 200 videos and audios, homeworks that you do every week, and it's interesting and entertaining, and it's endlessly novel and different. It's very rare you ever see the same thing twice. Now, if that could cure depression, from severe depression to cured, would that be worth £1,300? Because it would cost more than that to see me as a face-to-face therapist. And I think that is the best. I think Mood Control is the best active self-help CBT program in the world for treating depression. So, Panic Pit Stop, £650, value to you. Mood Control, £1,300, value to you. Now, a modern approach, sometimes called the fourth way, a modern approach to working with anxiety, depression is called mindfulness. Now, a lot of mindfulness stuff is you sit and you listen to a guided meditation. That's not actually mindfulness in my opinion. I learned, and I spent many years practicing something that I call active mindfulness. It's you're mindful in the moment doing what you're doing, so you can bring the tools with you that you need to be able to apply a mindful process to whatever problems that we're struggling with. Bear in mind that most of the problems that you struggle with are automatic. They're on automatic pilot because you've practiced them so much you don't even notice them half the time. That's where mindfulness comes in as a useful tool. The mindfulness journey, which is a 7-day program inside the active self-help programs, is £100. So that brings us to a total value to you, not what you're going to pay, but a value to you of $2,050. And I think you're going to be astounded actually when you find out what it is I'm suggesting that you might have to invest. Now, we have bonus programs which are free. A popular one is Make Worry History. You'll recognize when we did our sort of matrix things that worry is a process that cuts across every problem. No matter what the problem is, panic, anxiety, depression, you're going to have the elements of worry. Now, the worry course gives you some fantastic tools that you can use to stop worry. Worry is simply a bad habit, and it's not that hard to stop it if you know what to do. That's free. Continuing with the free bonuses, which are additional programs that you get and are always available to you, and they're completely free. The 7-day Boost Your Self-Esteem Challenge. Now, I created this to help people have tools that they can use, a different tool every day more or less for 7 days. And the people who did this as a little research project that we developed with the Facebook group is that your self-esteem is boosted after just 7 days of doing something useful and constructive. Now, if you think about it, how damaging is poor self-esteem to virtually everything that you do? It turns out you don't need to have to struggle with poor self-esteem. That's added free as a bonus. Other bonus programs. We have the Office Hours series and we have the Insight from the Clinic series. Now, both of these series answer really kind of fundamental questions that many people have asked me over recent times actually, about how to treat this, how to treat that, what causes this, what causes that. And it's always around panic, anxiety, depression, stress, OCD, personality issues, relationship issues, etc. Those two programs give you things which are a little bit wider, a little bit broader from the actual problems of panic, anxiety, depression that you can look at, because we want to inform you, because when you have knowledge, you have power. That's free. If you think about worry as being a really core component, I call it the thinking part of anxiety. Worry is always about what's happening in the future. Overthinking and rumination are about what's happening in the past. So another bonus program that we have is the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge. And this was to provide the tools and resources necessary to stop overthinking and therefore to be much more present. And one person said, look, I finished the 7-Day Overthinking Challenge. It was really good. I did the questionnaire a few days after and it was reduced by 11. I found everything in the challenge really useful and I definitely stopped overthinking at the time. I just need to keep doing it. I'm still doing the end EFT exercise and trying to stop automatic thoughts. So that is another bonus added to the mood control for 1300, the panic pit stop for 650, the mindfulness journey for 100. Still a total, but this is the total value to you, not what I'm going to ask you to invest in, 2050, and the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge is a free bonus. So this is what we've got. Panic pit stop, mood control, Make Worry History, the mindfulness journey, the Office Hours series, the Insight from the Clinic series, the 7-Day Boost Your Self-Esteem Challenge, and the Stop Overthinking 7-Day Challenge. The total value of just the panic pit stop, mood control, and mindfulness journey is 2050 with respect to value to you, but you get all of these programs as well. Now, 3 programs that typically we'd have to pay for, and the 5 bonus programs. Now, everything can be changed. I visited Dr. Purvis when I was going through a difficult time in my life. There was no real explanation to why I was feeling like I was. However, I knew things were not right. I felt extremely anxious within the work environment, and it got to the point where I didn't want to go into the office and work with other people. I blushed if the attention was put on me, and I had panic attacks at least 3 to 4 times a day. It was exhausting and affecting me personally and professionally. I went to see Dr. Purvis as I couldn't go on like this. Over the 8 weeks of visiting him and using the Panic Pit Stop program, I learned a variety of techniques and made me think about situations differently. I used mantra and visual techniques to change my thoughts, which really worked. I practice these daily and always will to keep on top of any negativity which leads to anxiousness. Anxiety is a horrible, life-ruining mental illness which can be overcome. I'm much better now and doing well at work and even pursuing my own business dream. Thank you, Dr. Purvis. That is from someone who used the Panic Pit Stop program. So, we can't deny that anxiety and depression exist in the world. However, this is the thing that you might not realize. I hope that this talk has helped you to realize a little bit more, that these problems are both very, very common and treatable. If you've been fobbed off with an antidepressant, it's because the system isn't really set up to offer you anything much more. It's a very cheap option, but it's not a treatment. It's only a maintenance. CBT is the actual treatment, but it's much, much more expensive to deliver. That's why, if you want to actually have the power of CBT, but you don't want to have to pay the, which could be several £1,000s to get the treatment, the active self-help CBT approach is your way forward, because as I said just a few moments ago, when you learn how to treat yourself, you own that information and you're able to then apply it to your own life, because your mental health is more important to you than it is to anyone else. So, the total value of the active self-help CBT programs is £2,050. But it only costs you £17.49 per week, which I have worked out to be a cost of a Starbucks. So if you have a Starbucks medium latte, which is what I would have, that will, if you have one every day, that will work out to be £17.49. For £17.49 per week, you can be clear and free of panic, anxiety, depression, and you can acquire the knowledge and skills to never have to struggle with that again. Now, if I said to you you could be free, you can have good mental health, you can recover your life, be happy and successful again for £17.49 per week, would that seem like a good deal? Would it seem like it was a fair exchange in a sense? I hope it would, because the Active Self-Help CBT Programs Library in the fabulous Dr. Purvis offer is the largest and most comprehensive, the most useful Active Self-Help CBT library in the world. But here's the thing. If you join, if you commit to changing your life, right? If you make a decision, yeah, I want to feel better, right? Make a decision to feel better. In the next 30 minutes, you get the first 2 weeks for £1. So if you kind of go, I hear you, I understand what you've said, and I accept that anxiety and depression are multi-elemented things, and these elements have to be dealt with, and the way to deal with these elements is to go through these courses which deal with these individual elements. I accept that, but I'd like to just try it out for myself. You can try it for £1. You can have the first 2 weeks for £1. Now, that's 50p a week. If you had treatment with me, well, I certainly wouldn't do it for £1, but you could learn a vast amount, and you could really see the power of active self-help in 2 weeks for £1. After that, it reverts to £17.49, which basically is a Starbucks latte every day. And even that, in my opinion, is not prohibitive. If you want to have a different experience, this is the thing to do. Now, you can cancel at any time. There's no long-term commitment, and you have my personal guarantee, a 30-day refund if you're just not satisfied or if it doesn't work for you for any reason, okay? If you want to change your life, if you want to be rid of panic, anxiety, depression, you can do it now for £1. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this. I hope you find it useful. I find that when I'm talking to people about this, the thought that pops into their mind is generally something along the lines of, it won't work for me. Or another one is, my problem's too serious. Or another one is, my problem's long-standing. Yeah, well, I've had this for so long, I just don't know how to, be different. Okay, that's fine. It won't work for you if you don't try it. In my research, I have worked with people in the NHS, when I was doing the research projects in the NHS. It doesn't matter whether you've got severe anxiety or not, severe depression or not. The thing is whether you do something about it, or whether you remain disempowered and feeling helpless. My problems are too long-standing. Again, I commonly see people who've been on antidepressants 18, 20 years, anxiolytics, powerful benzodiazepines, 15 years. Still we can resolve the problem, because if you deal with the elements that cause the problem goes away. It doesn't matter how long you've had the problem, the problem goes away. So it might seem that your problem's too hard. It's not. It might seem that it's too long-standing. It's not. It might seem that you've been practicing being anxious, depressed, and it just seems like it's a normal part of your life. Sure, but problems exist and persist in the absence of an alternative. If you don't have an alternative, the problem will exist and persist. This is your alternative, and I can't make it really any easier to get the alternative. It's £1. Join in the next 30 minutes and it's £1 for the first 2 weeks. So you've got a great opportunity to try it out. Again, thank you for taking the time to watch and listen, and I look forward to meeting you inside the Panic Pit Stop, Mood Control, Mindfulness Journey. In fact, the fantastic Dr. Purvis online programs. Take care.